that President-elect Donald Trump is going to be running things?
Well, this just follows a very unconventional campaign, of course, McGraw. And one of the interesting things was after that Saturday Night Live skit, Donald Trump took to Twitter to vent his unhappiness with the way Saturday Night Live treated him. He also took to Twitter to attack the cast of Hamilton, the Broadway show, for lecturing Mike Pence at their performance. But, Trump understood something very important about the modern media universe, that using Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, he boasted in one interview that he had over 28 million followers on those three platforms alone. He's understood that he can use this media to just talk directly to his supporters, to circumvent the media. It was an effective tactic as a candidate, and it looks like he's going to do the same thing as president.
How much of that is it's a brilliant political move because people are talking about him unconventionally criticizing people who are criticizing him, but it sort of takes away from maybe some of the missteps in his early transition period.
Well, yes. It also remains to be seen whether the persona that he adopted as a candidate is going to fit as president. You're measured through its very different lens. And over the weekend, he seemed a little petty to engage in these Twitter wars with Saturday Night Live and the cast of Hamilton. You would think he'd have other things to worry about, like finding a Secretary of State. So he's got to find his way. You got to remember that so much about him is unconventional. The way he ran his campaign, his own lack of political experience, I think that's added to the sense of disarray in his transition. After all, he has very few long-standing political relationships, very few allies, and he doesn't have really very well-advanced policy prescriptions. It's not as if he can look around and say, okay, here's what I really want to do in terms of financial policy, so I'm going to find a Secretary of the Treasury who can implement my policies, because he doesn't really have those detailed policies. His campaign, as you and I talked about so often, was a triumph of personality, was a triumph of emotions, it was a triumph of slogans about change. But now he's got to get serious about filling some important jobs, and it's going to be a little more difficult for someone with his lack of experience and his lack of connection.
Stephen Roberts, there is a theory floating around there that he'll be the figurehead and he'll sign any legislation that Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan put on his desk, and the three of them, along with Pence, will be running the country, and they'll just wheel out Donald Trump for a news conference every once in a while.
I don't believe that. I know the Saturday Night Live skit, as you mentioned, they had a moment where the Alec Baldwin playing Trump basically says to the Pence figure, "You're going to do it all, right, Mike?" And I don't think that's going to happen. I think Donald Trump ran for president because there are things he wants to do. Now, he's very inexperienced in terms of legislation. I think Mike Pence was picked in part because he does have experience on Capitol Hill. He has good relationships. I think Pence will be a very important emissary and strategist in terms of dealing with Capitol Hill. But I got to believe it's going to be Donald Trump who calls the shots.
What about Mitt Romney? Do they patch things up, and does Mitt Romney come onto this cabinet scene anywhere?
It's a really good question. And I think it would be very smart on Trump's part to pick Mitt Romney. After all, at the end of a campaign, you have to reunify a party that often has some hard feelings in terms of what was said during a primary. And there are two interesting examples that you can look to for this. One, of course, was Hillary Clinton. The fact is that Clinton and Obama had quite an angry and bruising primary, and Obama turns around, names her Secretary of State, and John Kerry, a defeated presidential candidate, succeeds her as Secretary of State. So Mitt Romney was both of these. And I think that it would be very smart because Trump is widely viewed with wide skepticism on the part of Democrats, on the part of foreign leaders, because he's so inexperienced and has no track record and no relationships around the world. I think picking Mitt Romney would give everybody a certain reassurance. It'd be a very smart move. I don't know if he'll do it, and I don't know if Romney will take it, but I think a lot of people would like to see that happen.
Stephen Roberts, happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for checking in all these many weeks and months.
Anytime, pal.
Stephen Roberts, ABC News political analyst, the best in the business, with us every Monday here on the Big 550.